Thank you very much. Calhoun, I'm so glad to be sharing space with you and everyone else. That was such a beautiful story. Thank you very much for sharing. I'm going to do something. We're going to have a conversation about data, and I'm going to pass it off to the expert, Miranda, shortly. But I want to start with a short anecdote, which will hopefully kind of explain why the queer chamber exists here in Alberta. So I'm 40 years old. I just turned 40 in December, and I transitioned. I went through gender transition about 4 or 5 years ago. It was very, very exciting. It was a big shift in my life, but I actually had like a whole professional life before doing all these things in great queer community. And that meant that I spent a lot of time in, for lack of a better phrase, straight chambers and events where I was surrounded by a lot of traditional business networks and organizational networks. And you really do see this difference in the experience and the confidence. And I remember being at those events and talking to someone who had just written down an idea on a napkin, and in their minds I was talking to a future billionaire, and I better get their card because I'm going to be needing it for all their charity work that's going to be coming up once our idea lands. And then flash forward, we're hosting these amazing networking events with queer and trans individuals, and I'm talking to someone who has a marketing plan, a partner, financing, has a plan about how to go to market, has their first sale already, even if it's unofficial, and they're saying, but I don't know if I am actually the right person to do this. The wrong people have imposter syndrome, is my assessment of before and after. I'm extremely grateful to get to do this work. I kind of have to pinch myself, to be honest. I get to be here, I get to be myself, and I know firsthand the experience of how much more accessible my creativity, my empathy, my compassion is when I found home in myself. And so the fact that I get to be a part of this community, get to build that for other organizations, for other businesses, is just such a dream come true. And so with that, I want to pass it off to Miranda Jimmy from RUNWITHIT Synthetics, who's going to talk to you about an awesome project we have. A little bit more quickly about the chamber. We do events, we do programming, we do mentorship, and something that we've really ramped up recently is our research function. And so we have 3 research projects that are currently going on right now, and I'm going to explain them really quickly. So the first one is we are actually journey mapping the queer and trans entrepreneurial experience. We're trying to identify the unique barriers they face. So I don't want to just have our data, but we're really trying to pull in as much of that insight as possible. So if you're interested in participating, sharing data, sharing in your network about how we can identify those barriers, please reach out. Our goal is to create a resource guide that's interactive so people can go from idea to something in the market, whether it's a social enterprise, a not-for-profit, a business, whatever it happens to be, and we can help make them that a reality. The second thing we're doing is economic impact analysis. So we're saying $1 invested in a queer business, what does that get you on the other end of it? And so we've talked to a bunch of our members within our chamber, and it's not just about the financial impact, but it's about them doing business in a way that is agreeable with the broader ecosystem. We're talking about living wages for people. We're talking about in a better relationship with sustainability in the land. And so we're really trying to track that so we can make the data case to say, invest in queer and trans business, not because it's good or not because it's charity, but because it's a good damn investment. That's it. And the last thing we're doing, which Miranda is going to talk about, is some cool geospatial mapping, which I'm finally wrapping my brain around exactly what it is. And with that, I'll pass it off to Miranda Jimmy.
This work? Thank you, everyone. It's been a wonderful day so far. The reason we're here, the reason I met Elli was through Celine and others in the room who have crossed paths before, included Gladys, who made this possible. And I think we've been having conversations at our table around how Edmonton's kind of a small town that grew up. And so we're just a bunch of networks of people who intersect and cross paths. And so thank you to people who have the money to bring people like us together. So thank you to everyone who supported today. So We met in September last year at an event, and a conversation started ruminating between the two of us about data collection and how do you tell stories with data that are meaningful, impactful, and are way more exciting than reading a 20-page report. And so the problem is that all costs money. And so as we start talking, more people come to the conversation. And less than 5 weeks ago, we had a meeting with some people in this room who I met for the first time today in person, who said, we have a bit of money. What can you do in 8 weeks with a bit of money to kind of get this idea going? And then we found out a week later, 8 weeks turned into 5 weeks, and 5 weeks turned into, well, can you actually present it in 4 weeks? And so in 3 weeks, we got this together. So I want to just premise by what I'm going to share with you today, and there's a handout on your table as well that we're going to kind of point to. So what we started with is what can we do in that time period with the money that we have is we can start processing the data that we know exists through membership at the Queer Chamber, and start to visualize it in a way that tells a different story than just a membership list. So we started with our platform at RUNWITHIT Synthetics, which does geospatial mapping of data to think about information and data points as a network, as a system of systems that relies on each other. So we started with, is this working? There we go. So this is our map of Alberta. Make the video work. And there we go. So this is what our maps look like. So we mapped all of the known businesses in Alberta as a starting point. So you can start to see when you see this information on a map, how there are concentrations of businesses. There may be information that you're curious about in a different way than just seeing it in a written form. You start to see yourself in this map now. So now we have a map of all the Alberta-based businesses. What if we also put onto that all of the queer-owned and allied businesses that are members of the chamber along with that? Then we start to see correlations between that data. We also start to see concentrations of particular communities that have more queer-owned businesses, but it also identifies gaps of where opportunities might exist or where there's some interesting things that we might not have known about. And so from this, we can start to inform the chamber and thinking about where they need to be showing up, where are the opportunities to connect with businesses they weren't aware of, but also what are some opportunities for different types of businesses. Going right down to the data source, we know now there are particular neighborhoods in communities where there are higher concentrations of businesses, including Wakwentowin, where we are right now, in central Edmonton, and similar in Calgary, in the central areas is where the concentration of businesses are. Again, this is different than reading it on a document or seeing it in a table. It's seeing yourself and recognizing and asking questions now. Why is this? Why are there specific neighborhoods that create economic hubs for queer-owned businesses? Why are there some outliers outside of that that seem to thrive in those places as well? Each of these data points has more than just a spot on a map. We can also learn more about the kind of business that they operate, click on and visit their website, access their phone number, their contact information, and learn if they're a member or not. So this is now for every data point of all businesses across Alberta. So we know there's probably businesses that are queer-owned or ally-owned that aren't members of the chamber. So that also opens up a huge opportunity for them to think about and query a little bit more. So what is now possible with our model is the ability to start asking some of the questions that are outlined on that handout, which started our conversation with the chamber of this is the research we want to be able to do. So now we can start to answer some of those questions by seeing it. We can also start to tell more compelling stories. We can see data in different ways and see correlations between data that we've never seen before. What our platform also allows is this ability to query and ask questions of the data. So asking our platform to show us all of the kinds of businesses that are queer or ally owned in Alberta, and it'll provide a list. Then if we want to kind of go down further, show me all the bookstores in Alberta that are queer owned or allied. And then it gives us a list. And then you can go zoom in directly to that business and learn about them. Maybe it's a business you didn't even know that's right down the street from you, that's a member of the chamber. Maybe that's how you want to choose to spend your dollars and investing in businesses that you didn't know were connected in that way. So again, this is very different than having a database that you search, because you start to see your relationship to place and space and community in a different way. So what's possible next? Again, we can start to use this data in different ways. The Chamber can use it to think about expanding their membership or learning more about the businesses that operate in Alberta. We can do further analysis on the data that's in there. We can start to create queries and request information that we didn't know that we had access to. Ultimately, we can start telling more compelling stories by visualizing data in a different way and showing the impact of those economic hubs and the communities that rely on those businesses.
Thank you very much, Miranda. I'm really blown away. This was done in less than a month. And just a quick shout out to Dr. Linda Lieb, because every time I've had conversations with her, I feel like I have delusions of grandeur in like the best sense of that word. And I think a lot of people have that effect around. So thank you very much. And thank you to REKH for the support on this. It truly, this just wouldn't be possible without it to get that first kind of start at this going. So this is a part of an initiative that we launched actually just in December called 1,000 Queer Businesses Strong. Really, this was a response to me writing article after article that was saying this government sucks. And for specific queer and trans like legislation, I was tired of just writing these anti-trans and anti-queer like response pieces and then sending it into the universe. And I thought, that's not the Alberta that I know. The Alberta that I know is inclusive. The Alberta that I know wants an inclusive economy, believes in a diverse, inclusive economy. And so that's what we launched with 1,000 Queer Business Strong. It's not just for queer businesses, it's for allied businesses as well that really believe in that dream of an inclusive economy. And so the data really represents kind of where we're trying to go with this broad network, to be able to stand with 1,000 voices to say this is not the future that Alberta deserves, this is not the future that Alberta wants. And so I'm imagining a little bit of a future in which we know we're not supposed to shop at Amazon because we want to keep dollars local. Where do we spend that money, and how do we make that as easy as possible? How do I say I want to find a plumber and I want them to be queer or trans, or I want them to be an ally in the community at the least, and how do I really make that as easy as possible? The foundation of what we're building here will allow for that. So if you're interested in participating in this in some way, in talking about 1,000 Queer Business Strong, in having us talk about it in your community, in being involved in the data collection or sharing your data, please, please, please get in touch. I really believe that we're just stronger together. We're just a small team at the Queer Chamber. And so what I've had to do is just waste time in the best sense possible in communities where I get to meet brilliant, creative, empathetic people who really share my dream of an inclusive economy here in Alberta. Really quickly, I've left the project overview. Ooh, I have 3 minutes. I've never been under time. Not once in my life have I been under time. So we have I guess 3 phases of this is what we just launched on phase 1. So that's the idea, is to map queer, trans, and allied businesses across Alberta. It's not just queer chamber members, although we've grown more than 60% since September. And so we're really proud of that, but we wanted to be kind of more inclusive of that. So through 1,000 Queer Business Strong, we're also asking people to put their hand up and say, we also want to be a part of this. We've done Instagram and social media call-outs. People be like, tell us what your favorite businesses that happen to be in, you know, Athabasca or Red Deer. And queer and trans businesses are everywhere, is what we're finding. And so that's what's represented here. Phase 2 is to analyze that economic and social impacts and really test policy and program scenarios. I think we're under a huge technological and economic transformation right now, and I think entrepreneurship is not going to be just a pathway for some people to explore, but a really large thing. And we want to widen the doors for people to see themselves in that role. And too many entrepreneurs that I know are very successful would never even define themselves as entrepreneurs. They don't even see themselves in that way. And so how do we make that a bit of a wider doorway for people to walk through? Third thing is scaling and impact, is leveraging those findings toward the development of a queer future center with the goal of supporting queer and trans thriving through entrepreneurship across Alberta. And again, the broadest definition of that, we're around queer entrepreneurship. So I left this on the table. This is the one that was left, right? Work with people who are just like really on top of it, is my bit of guidance that I have here. Perfect. So please take a look. My email is on here. Our website is on here. If you just search 1000 Queer Business Strong Alberta, you'll find us. I would love it if you would reach out, grab a coffee with me, talk about how we can do this work together. Thank you so much for having me here and Miranda here and the whole day. Thanks.